In the vast expanse of the galaxy, where ancient civilizations measure their existence in millions of years and consider technology and art form perfected over eons, there exists a peculiar truth that even the most advanced species refuse to acknowledge. Sometimes the most brilliant solutions come from the most unexpected sources. The Galactic Consortium had always viewed humans as reckless tinkerers, a species barely out of their technological infancy, prone to dangerous experimentation and utterly lacking in the sophisticated grace that defined true civilization. They were tolerated, barely, as useful laborers and occasional entertainment. But what happens when you take the most ingenious of these primitive humans, strip away everything they hold dear, and cast them into the void with nothing but their wit and an unbreakable human spirit? What happens when exile becomes opportunity and a barren world becomes a canvas for the kind of innovation that makes gods tremble? The Consortium was about to learn that humanity's greatest strength isn't their technology, it's their refusal to accept that anything is impossible. This is the story of Marcus Chen, a human who turned exile into empire, desolation into salvation, and proved that sometimes the universe's greatest miracles are built by hands that others deemed unworthy of the tools. Marcus Chen pressed his palm against the cold metal of the transport ship's window, watching the blue-green marble of Earth shrink into nothing more than a distant star. The shackles around his wrists had been removed hours ago, but he could still feel their weight. The Galactic Consortium had made their judgment clear, exiled to the outer rim, to a dead world designated only by coordinates, Kepler TC. The transport captain, a tall crystalline being from the Zephyrian Collective, had barely acknowledged Marcus's existence during the 3-week journey. To most galactic species, humans were little more than clever animals who had stumbled into space travel. The fact that one had been convicted of technological terrorism against the Consortium's most sacred research facility was both shocking and embarrassing to the galactic powers. Marcus didn't see it as terrorism, he saw it as liberation. 6 months ago, he had been Dr. Marcus Chen, one of Earth's most promising xenotechnology researchers, working within the Consortium's carefully controlled parameters. His job had been simple: study alien technology, learn from it but never attempt to improve upon it. The galactic community had made it abundantly clear that humans were not ready for such responsibilities. But Marcus had discovered something that changed everything. Deep within the Consortium's research archives, he found evidence of systematic suppression, not just of human innovation, but of dozens of species across the galaxy. Technologies that could solve hunger, disease, and energy crises were locked away, deemed too dangerous for younger civilizations. The breaking point came when Marcus learned about the Vithrok. An entire species had been denied access to their own ancestral healing technology because the Consortium considered them insufficiently evolved to handle it. Millions died from a plague that could have been cured with their own people's ancient knowledge. Marcus had done what any human with half a conscience would do. He broke into the archives, liberated the suppressed technologies, and transmitted them freely across the galaxy. In the chaos that followed, 17 different species gained access to medical, energy, and agricultural technologies that transformed their civilizations overnight. The Consortium's response was swift and merciless. Marcus was arrested, tried in a court where he had no representation, and sentenced to permanent exile on a world that was supposedly uninhabitable by human standards. Now, as the transport ship approached Kepler 442c, Marcus got his first look at his new home. The planet was a brown, lifeless sphere roughly twice the size of Earth, with no visible atmosphere and certainly no signs of life. According to the Consortium's reports, it was a failed world, too close to its dying red dwarf star to support complex life, but not close enough to have any useful energy sources. Perfect for dumping unwanted humans, apparently. The transport ship's docking bay opened with a mechanical hiss, revealing a stark, utilitarian chamber that would serve as Marcus's one-way ticket to exile. The captain finally spoke, its voice resonating with crystalline harmonics that translated roughly into Consortium standard. "Prisoner Chen, you will be provided with basic survival equipment sufficient for one standard galactic year. The beacon attached to your supplies will allow for emergency evacuation, but only in cases of imminent death. Attempted misuse will result in termination of evacuation protocols. Marcus nodded, understanding the unspoken message. They expected him to die here, slowly and alone. The beacon was just to ease the consortium's conscience about executing him outright. The equipment they provided was laughably minimal, a basic atmospheric processor small enough to create a breathable bubble around a single person, emergency rations for 6 months, water recycling equipment, a simple fabrication unit capable of producing basic tools, and a shelter pod that could extend into a small living space. Most importantly, they left him with a basic sensor array and a data pad containing limited information about the planet. They probably figured it would help him survive long enough to suffer properly. Marcus shouldered his pack and walked into the docking chamber. The captain's final words followed him. The consortium shows mercy even to terrorists. You have been given life. What you do with it is no longer our concern. The ship departed within minutes, leaving Marcus alone on the surface of a dead world. The first thing that struck him was the silence. On Earth, there was always some kind of ambient noise. Wind, water, life. Here, there was nothing but the soft hum of his atmospheric processor and the distant rumble of the planet's core. The surface was covered in a fine, reddish dust that crunched under his feet like powdered glass. Marcus set up his shelter pod in the shadow of a large outcropping of dark stone, then spent the next several hours running sensor sweeps of the immediate area. What he found was both discouraging and fascinating. The planet was indeed lifeless, but it wasn't naturally barren. The sensor readings showed clear evidence of geological activity, mineral deposits, and most importantly, vast underground water reserves. The atmospheric readings showed traces of oxygen and nitrogen, not enough to breathe, but enough to suggest that this world had once supported life. As the dim red sun set on his first day of exile, Marcus sat in his shelter and reviewed the data. The consortium had sent him here to die, but they had also given him something they probably didn't realize, a challenge that would engage every fiber of his being. This world wasn't dead, it was sleeping. Over the next few days, Marcus expanded his sensor sweeps using every trick he had learned during his xenotechnology research. What he discovered was staggering. The planet's core was still active, generating a weak magnetic field that could be enhanced. The underground water reserves were massive, enough to supply oceans if they could be brought to the surface. The mineral composition of the soil suggested that with the right treatment, it could support plant life. Most remarkably, he found evidence of ancient artificial structures buried deep beneath the surface. Not ruins, actual functioning technology, dormant but intact. Marcus realized that he was not the first exile to be sent to this world. The consortium had been using Kepler 442c as a dumping ground for inconvenient individuals for centuries, possibly millennia. The buried structures were the work of previous exiles, beings from dozens of different species who had been sent here to die but had instead chosen to build. On his 10th day of exile, Marcus made contact with the first structure. It was a crystalline formation about 3 meters below the surface, approximately 50 meters from his shelter. His sensors indicated that it was artificial and that it contained some kind of data storage system. Using his fabrication unit, Marcus created crude digging tools and spent the better part of a day excavating. What he found changed everything. The structure was a memorial in a database. Created by a Zephyrian exile named Kethvar, who had been sent here 300 years ago, it contained detailed geological surveys, atmospheric analysis, and most importantly, a complete record of everything that previous exiles had learned about the planet. According to Kethvar's records over the past millennium, more than 2,000 individuals from 47 different species had been sent to Kepler 442c. Most had died within the first year, but a significant number had survived long enough to contribute to a collective knowledge base. They had been working generation by generation to understand the planet and develop ways to restore it to life. The memorial contained contact information for 17 different hidden installations across the planet's surface, each containing technologies and resources left behind by previous exiles. It also contained something else, a detailed plan for planetary restoration that was centuries in the making. Marcus spent the next week visiting the nearby installations. What he found was a treasure trove of abandoned technology and resources. A Vithric exile had left behind advanced medical fabrication equipment. A group of silicon-based Keth had created sophisticated mineral processing systems. Most remarkably, a human exile from nearly a century ago, Dr. Sarah Kim, had left behind detailed plans for atmospheric processors based on Earth technology. But none of them had possessed the one thing Marcus brought to the table, knowledge of how to integrate technologies from dozens of different species into unified systems. His work with the consortium, despite its limitations, had given him unparalleled experience in xenotechnology. For the first time since his arrival, Marcus smiled. By his 20th day on Kepler, 442c, Marcus had established communication links with 3 of the planet's 17 hidden installations and had begun cataloging available resources. He discovered that the installations were connected by an ancient underground communication network that previous exiles had maintained and expanded over the centuries. The network was primitive by consortium standards, but it was functional. More importantly, it was completely hidden from galactic sensors. The planet's unique mineral composition naturally shielded electromagnetic communications, making it invisible to orbital surveillance. Marcus began to form a plan that was breathtaking in its scope and audacious in its ambition. The previous exiles had laid the groundwork for planetary restoration, but they had been thinking too small. They had been planning to create small habitable zones where exiles could survive. Marcus was thinking about something much bigger. Using the combined knowledge of 2,000 exiles from 47 different species, he began designing a planetary transformation system that would turn Kepler 442c into something the galaxy had never seen before. A world where any sentient being could not only survive, but thrive. But he couldn't do it alone. Marcus began sending signals through the underground network, reaching out to any surviving exiles who might still be on the planet. The responses that came back over the following days surprised him. He wasn't as alone as he thought. Hidden in installations across the planet were 43 surviving exiles from 17 different species. Some had been here for decades, others for only a few years. They had formed a loose confederation, sharing resources and knowledge while working on their own survival projects. Marcus's message was simple. Instead of just surviving, what if they worked together to build something that would make the galaxy take notice? The responses were immediate and enthusiastic. These weren't just random criminals or dissidents. They were scientists, engineers, and philosophers who had been exiled for the same reason Marcus had. They had dared to challenge the consortium's rigid control over technology. Dr. Zentar, a crystalline researcher who had been exiled for developing unsanctioned energy technologies, became Marcus's first major collaborator. Within days, they'd established a real-time communication link and begun sharing technical specifications. Engineer Vorthak, a member of the silicone-based Keth species who had been sent to Kepler, 442c for unlawful technological synthesis, provided access to advanced mineral processing systems that could transform the planet's soil composition. Most significantly, Marcus made contact with someone he thought was dead, Dr. Sarah Kim, the human exile from a century ago. At 127 years old and sustained by Vithrock medical technology, she had been working for decades on atmospheric processing systems and had been waiting for someone with Marcus's specific expertise to help complete her work. The confederation that formed over the following weeks was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Beings from species that had never interacted working together with a common goal to prove that the consortium's rigid hierarchy was not just wrong, but dangerously limiting to the progress of all galactic civilization. Marcus looked out at the barren landscape surrounding his shelter and began to see something different, not a lifeless wasteland, but a blank canvas, waiting for the greatest collaborative artwork in galactic history. The consortium had sent him here to die in obscurity. Instead, he was about to become the architect of something that would reshape their understanding of what was possible when brilliant minds were allowed to work together without artificial limitations. The real work was about to begin. 3 months after his arrival on Kepler, 442C Marcus Chen stood in the center of what had once been an empty crater and was now the bustling heart of the most ambitious engineering project in galactic history. The Exiled Confederation, as they had come to call themselves, had transformed the barren landscape into something that defied every assumption about what was possible on a dead world. The crater itself had been chosen for practical reasons. It provided natural protection from the planet's fierce dust storms while offering easy access to several underground water reserves. But what the Confederation had built here was far more than a simple survival outpost. Rising from the crater floor was a magnificent spiral tower that stretched nearly 200 meters into the thin atmosphere. Built using a combination of crystalline growth techniques, Keth mineral processing, and human engineering principles, the tower served as both a communications hub and a symbol of what different species could accomplish when they worked together without the consortium's restrictive oversight. Marcus walked along one of the elevated walkways that connected the tower to various processing facilities scattered throughout the crater. Below him, automated systems designed by a dozen different species worked in perfect harmony. Atmospheric processors based on Dr. Kim's century-old research hummed quietly as they gradually thickened the air inside the crater's protective dome. Hydroponic facilities using Vithrak biotechnology were already producing food crops adapted from seeds that various exiles had managed to preserve from their homeworlds. Most remarkably, the entire facility was powered by a fusion reactor that combined technologies from 7 different civilizations. The consortium maintained that such technological integration was impossible, that each species' technology was too specialized and culturally specific to work with systems from other civilizations. The reactor powering their settlement proved that assumption was spectacularly wrong. Dr. Zentar approached Marcus along the walkway, its crystalline form refracting the artificial sunlight that their atmospheric processors had made possible within the dome. The crystalline scientist moved with the fluid grace that characterized its species, but there was an excitement in its electromagnetic emanations that Marcus had learned to recognize. The latest sensor readings from the orbital monitoring stations are remarkable, Zentar communicated through the translation device that Marcus had helped design. Atmospheric density within the primary dome has increased by 37% in just the past week. If we maintain this rate of progress, we will have a fully breathable atmosphere within 6 months. Marcus nodded, but his attention was focused on something much more ambitious than just creating livable space for the current Confederation members. That's excellent progress, but I want to discuss the planetary scale expansion. Have you completed the mineral analysis for the northern continent? Zentar's form shifted to a deeper blue, indicating enthusiasm mixed with concern. The analysis confirms what we suspected. The mineral deposits there are ideal for large-scale atmospheric processing, but the logistical challenges are significant. We would need to establish supply lines across 3,000 kilometers of hostile terrain. That's where the transport network comes in, Marcus replied, gesturing toward a series of launch platforms that were under construction on the crater's rim. Engineer Vorthak believes the magnetic catapult system will be operational within 2 weeks. Once we can launch cargo containers into orbit, distance becomes irrelevant. The transport network was another example of the Confederation's revolutionary approach to technology integration. Traditional galactic civilizations used either chemical rockets or gravity manipulators for orbital transport, technologies that required massive infrastructure and were heavily regulated by the consortium. The Confederation's solution was elegantly simple. Using the planet's magnetic field and a series of surface-based electromagnetic catapults, they could launch cargo containers directly into orbit at a fraction of the energy cost of conventional systems. From orbit, automated drones powered by solar collectors could deliver supplies anywhere on the planet's surface. It was exactly the kind of innovative thinking that the consortium discouraged among primitive species. Marcus and Zentar were interrupted by an urgent communication from Dr. Tiak. Kim, whose voice crackled through the settlement's communication system with barely contained excitement. "Marcus, you need to get down to Laboratory 7 immediately. We've made a discovery that changes everything. Laboratory 7 was located in the deepest section of the crater, built into natural caves that the Confederation had expanded and reinforced. As Marcus descended through the facility's levels, he passed workshops where beings from 17 different species were collaborating on projects that would have been considered impossible by galactic standards. In one workshop, a team of aquatic Mirai were working with desert-dwelling Saurian engineers to develop hydroponic systems that could function in both water-rich and arid environments. In another, a group of energy-based photonic beings was collaborating with solid matter Keth to create hybrid technologies that could manipulate both electromagnetic and physical materials. Dr. Kim was waiting for him in the central laboratory, surrounded by displays showing complex three-dimensional models of molecular structures. At 127 years old, she remained sharp and energetic, sustained by a combination of human medical technology and Vithrak life extension treatments that she had helped develop during her decades of exile. "Marcus, look at this," she said, gesturing toward the largest display. "We've been analyzing the soil samples from the southern polar region, and we found something extraordinary." The display showed a molecular structure that Marcus didn't immediately recognize, but its properties were clearly remarkable. The substance appeared to be some kind of crystalline formation with unique electromagnetic characteristics. "What am I looking at?" Marcus asked. "It's a naturally occurring quantum storage medium," Dr. Kim replied. "Not just any quantum storage, this stuff can hold more information per gram than anything in the consortium's technology database. We're talking about storage density that exceeds even the most advanced crystalline archives." Marcus felt his pulse quicken. "How much of this material is available?" "That's the amazing part, Doctor." Kim continued. "The entire southern polar region is sitting on deposits of this stuff. We're not talking about small veins or occasional outcroppings. We're talking about geological formations that contain more quantum storage capacity than the entire galactic library." The implications were staggering. The Galactic Library was the consortium's most treasured resource, a massive archive containing the collective knowledge of hundreds of civilizations spanning millions of years. The idea that a single planet could contain more storage capacity than the library itself was almost incomprehensible. But Marcus immediately saw something even more significant than the raw storage capacity. "We could build our own library," he said quietly. "Not just storage, a completely independent information network that the consortium couldn't monitor or control." Dr. Kim smiled. "I was hoping you'd see that possibility, but there's something else. The quantum properties of this material suggest that it could support instantaneous communication across galactic distances. We could potentially connect every exile in the galaxy into a single real-time communication network." Marcus stared at the molecular display, his mind racing through the possibilities. The consortium controlled galactic civilization through information by limiting what technology species could access, what knowledge they could share, and how they could communicate with each other. What Dr. Kim was describing would completely bypass those restrictions. Over the next several hours, Marcus worked with Dr. Kim and a team of Confederation scientists to analyze the full implications of the discovery. The quantum storage material, which they designated as Keplerite after their host planet, was not only abundant but relatively easy to process using the Confederation's existing facilities. More importantly, initial tests suggested that Keplerite could be used to create communication devices that were completely invisible to consortium monitoring systems. The quantum characteristics that made it ideal for data storage also made transmissions through Keplerite networks appear as natural background radiation to conventional sensors. By evening, Marcus had called a full Confederation assembly to discuss the discovery and its implications. The assembly met in the tower's main conference chamber, a circular room with transparent walls that provided a panoramic view of their growing settlement. 43 beings from 17 different species gathered around the central display table. Each had been sent to Kepler, 442C for challenging the consortium's authority in some way, and each brought unique expertise and perspectives to the Confederation's collective efforts. Marcus began by presenting Dr. Kim's discovery and the initial analysis of Keplerite's properties. The reaction was immediate and enthusiastic. Several Confederation members began proposing applications for the material that went far beyond what Marcus had initially envisioned. Dr. Zenthara, a photonic being who had been exiled for developing unsanctioned energy transmission technologies, suggested that Keplerite could be used to create power distribution networks that could efficiently transmit energy across interstellar distances. Engineer Vorthak proposed using Keplerite storage systems to create manufacturing templates that could be instantly transmitted to any location in the galaxy, allowing for the rapid establishment of industrial facilities on previously uninhabited worlds. Most ambitiously, Dr. Zentar suggested that Keplerite communication networks could be used to coordinate simultaneous technological revolutions on multiple worlds, spreading Confederation innovations across the galaxy faster than the consortium could respond. But it was Commander Reiska, a former military officer from the warrior culture of the Talon Imperium, who raised the most important question. "This is all fascinating," the reptilian warrior said, its voice carrying the weight of decades of military experience. "But we need to consider the consortium's response. If we begin deploying these technologies on a galactic scale, they will not respond with bureaucratic oversight. They will respond with force." The chamber fell silent as the Confederation members considered the implications. Up until now, their work had been primarily defensive, creating a refuge where exiles could survive and work together without consortium interference. What they were now contemplating was fundamentally offensive, actively challenging the consortium's control over galactic civilization. Marcus stood and walked to the chamber's transparent walls, looking out over the settlement they had built together. In just 3 months, they had transformed a barren crater into a thriving community that demonstrated the potential of unrestricted scientific collaboration. But Commander Reiska was right. If they moved forward with their plans, they would be declaring war on the most powerful political entity in the galaxy. The consortium has controlled galactic civilization for over 10,000 years. Marcus said, turning back to face the assembly. "They've convinced entire species that technological progress requires their oversight and approval. They've suppressed innovations that could solve fundamental problems because they threaten the existing power structure." He gestured toward the displays showing their settlement's various technological achievements. "In 3 months, working together without their restrictions, we've made advances that individual species couldn't achieve in decades under consortium oversight. We've proven that their entire system is not just wrong, it's actively harmful to galactic progress." Marcus looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes, sensors, or attention-focusing organs of each Confederation member. "If we keep our work limited to this planet, we'll have created a beautiful refuge for a handful of exiles. But the consortium will continue to suppress billions of beings across the galaxy. The question we need to answer is simple. Are we content to hide here in safety, or are we going to do something about the larger problem?" Dr. Kim was the first to respond. "I've been on this planet for over a century, watching the consortium waste the potential of countless brilliant individuals. We have the opportunity to change that, not just for ourselves, but for every species that's been told they're not ready for their own technological heritage." Engineer Vorthak's silicone-based form shifted to indicate agreement. "The Keith people have been denied access to our own crystal-growing techniques for over 1,000 years because the consortium claims they're too dangerous for us to handle. We developed those techniques ourselves, yet we're treated like children who can't be trusted with our own knowledge." One by one, the Confederation members spoke up, sharing their own experiences with consortium suppression and expressing their willingness to take the risks necessary to challenge the system. By the end of the assembly, the Confederation had made a unanimous decision. They would begin Phase 2 of their project, the liberation of galactic technology. The plan they developed over the following days was audacious and comprehensive. Using Keplerite communication networks, they would make contact with sympathetic individuals across the galaxy, scientists, engineers, and innovators who had been frustrated by consortium restrictions but had never had the opportunity to work outside the system. They would establish hidden research facilities on uninhabited worlds, create secure communication networks that the consortium couldn't monitor, and begin sharing advanced technologies freely with any civilization that wanted them. Most importantly, they would document everything. Every technological breakthrough, every successful collaboration between different species, every demonstration that the consortium's restrictions were unnecessary would be recorded and distributed through their growing network. Marcus stood on the tower's observation deck as the binary sun set over their transformed crater. In the distance, he could see construction teams working around the clock to build the first Keplerite communication array. Within weeks, that array would connect them to exiles and dissidents across the galaxy. The consortium had sent him to this world to disappear and be forgotten. Instead, he was about to become the focal point of the greatest challenge to their authority in galactic history. But as he watched the lights of their growing settlement reflect off the crater walls, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced since his arrest on Earth: hope for the future of galactic civilization. Tomorrow, they would begin reaching out to the stars. 6 months after the first Keplerite communication array came online, Marcus Chen stood in the Confederation's new command center, watching real-time data streams from over 200 hidden installations across the galaxy. What had begun as a desperate survival project had evolved into something that was reshaping the fundamental structure of galactic civilization. The command center itself was a marvel of integrated technology. Built into a vast underground cavern that the Confederation had excavated beneath their original crater settlement, it housed communication equipment that could simultaneously coordinate activities on dozens of worlds while remaining completely invisible to consortium monitoring systems. The walls were lined with displays showing the status of research projects, resource flows, and communication links spanning half the galaxy. In the center of the chamber, a massive three-dimensional hologram displayed the growing network of liberated worlds, hidden research stations, and sympathetic contacts that now formed the backbone of what they had come to call the Liberation Network. Marcus reviewed the latest status reports with a mixture of pride and concern. The network's growth had exceeded their most optimistic projections, but it had also attracted attention from the consortium's intelligence services. 3 hidden installations had been discovered and destroyed in the past month, and several key network members had been arrested. Dr. Kim approached Marcus at the central control station, carrying a datapad containing intelligence reports from their contacts throughout consortium space. Her expression was serious but not discouraged. Over her century of exile, she had developed an impressive ability to maintain perspective during both successes and setbacks. The latest intercepts from the Consortium Security Council are concerning, she said, handing Marcus the datapad. They've identified our activities as the primary threat to galactic stability and have authorized the use of planetary bombardment protocols against any world suspected of harboring Liberation Network facilities. Noting the consortium's increasingly aggressive rhetoric and military preparations, the peaceful bureaucratic entity that had exiled him was revealing its true nature as a militaristic empire that would use any means necessary to maintain control. "How many worlds are we talking about?" Marcus asked. "Current intelligence suggests they have target lists for 47 different planetary systems," Dr. Kim replied. "That includes several worlds with indigenous populations that have no connection to our network. The consortium is apparently willing to destroy entire civilizations just to ensure they eliminate all possible Liberation Network installations." The implications were staggering. Marcus had expected the consortium to respond with force, but the scale of their planned response suggested a level of desperation that went far beyond protecting their political authority. They were preparing to commit genocide on an unprecedented scale. But the intelligence reports also contained information that gave Marcus hope. The consortium's aggressive plans had not gone unnoticed by their own member species. Several major civilizations were expressing concerns about the proposed military actions, and there were signs of significant internal dissent within the consortium's ruling council. Marcus was interrupted by an urgent communication from Commander Rieska, whose voice carried the tension of someone coordinating multiple crisis situations simultaneously. "Marcus, we have a situation developing in the Outer Rim sectors. Our contacts in the Helix Nebula are reporting consortium fleet movements toward 3 of our research installations. We need to decide how to respond. Marcus activated the central hologram, zooming in on the Helix Nebula region. 3 red markers indicated Liberation Network installations that were apparently under threat, while blue markers showed the approaching consortium fleets. The tactical situation was clear. The consortium forces would reach the installations within hours, and there was no way to evacuate the personnel or equipment in time. But Marcus had been preparing for this possibility. Over the past several months, the Liberation Network had developed something that the consortium didn't expect: military capabilities. "Commander, activate the Guardian Protocols," Marcus ordered. The Guardian Protocols represented one of the Liberation Network's most controversial innovations. Working with exiled military officers from dozens of different species, they had developed automated defense systems that could protect network installations without requiring large standing military forces. The systems used a combination of crystalline energy projection technology, Keth mineral manipulation, human tactical programming, and, most importantly, Keplerite-based coordination networks that could respond to threats faster than any biological or artificial intelligence. Within minutes of Marcus's order, the installations in the Helix Nebula activated defense systems that the approaching consortium fleets had no idea existed. The first installation, hidden within an asteroid field, revealed itself to be far more than a simple research station. As the consortium fleet approached, the asteroids themselves began to move, reconfiguring into a defensive formation that protected the installation while projecting energy barriers capable of deflecting heavy warship weapons. The second installation, built on the surface of an apparently barren moon, activated camouflaged weapons arrays that had been grown using modified crystalline technology. Instead of traditional projectile or energy weapons, the arrays fired clouds of programmable nanomaterials that could adapt to penetrate any known defensive system. Most remarkably, the third installation revealed that the entire planet it was built on was actually a vast Liberation Network construction project. What the consortium had assumed was a natural world was actually an artificial planet built using technologies from 17 different species working in coordination. The battle that followed lasted less than 2 hours and fundamentally changed the balance of power in the galaxy. The consortium fleets, designed to dominate through overwhelming technological superiority, found themselves facing adaptive defense systems that could counter their advantages in real time. The Liberation Network's coordination systems allowed their installations to share tactical information instantaneously, creating a collective intelligence that could outmaneuver individual fleet commanders. Most significantly, the network's defense systems were designed with a principle that no consortium military strategist had ever considered. Instead of destroying attacking forces, they captured and converted them. The programmable nanomaterials that penetrated consortium ships didn't explode or cause direct damage. Instead, they began systematically upgrading the ship's systems, integrating Liberation Network technologies while simultaneously providing the crews with access to unrestricted communication networks and suppressed technical knowledge. By the end of the battle, all 3 consortium fleets had been captured intact. More importantly, their crews had been given access to information that revealed the true scope of technological suppression throughout the galaxy. Marcus watched the tactical displays as ship after ship switched from red enemy markers to green allied markers. The crews of the captured vessels were using their new communication systems to make contact with the Liberation Network and requesting permission to join their cause. "This changes everything," Dr. Zentar observed, its crystalline form shifting to colors that indicated amazement and concern. "We're no longer a hidden resistance movement. We just demonstrated military capabilities that exceed the consortium's most advanced fleets." Marcus nodded, understanding that they had just crossed a line that made peaceful resolution impossible. The consortium would never negotiate with forces that had proven they could capture their military assets, and the galaxy would have to choose sides in an open conflict. But the reports that came in over the following hours suggested that the galaxy was already making that choice. Word of the Helix Nebula battle spread through both official consortium channels and the Liberation Network's growing communication systems. The reaction was immediate and decisive. Dozens of worlds that had been secretly supporting the network began openly declaring their independence from consortium authority. More significantly, several major consortium member species began withdrawing from the ruling council and establishing independent diplomatic relations with the Liberation Network. The peaceful facade of galactic unity that the consortium had maintained for millennia was finally collapsing. Marcus called an emergency assembly of the Confederation leadership to address the rapidly evolving situation. The meeting took place in the command center, with additional participants joining through secure Keplerite communication links from hidden installations across the galaxy. Dr. Kim began the session with a comprehensive overview of the current situation. "We're seeing cascade effects throughout consortium space," she reported. 17 major civilizations have formally withdrawn from the consortium. 43 worlds have declared independence. Most importantly, we're receiving requests for technical assistance from over 300 planetary governments. Engineer Vorthak provided an update on the network's manufacturing capabilities. Our distributed production systems are operating at full capacity, but we're struggling to meet demand for basic Liberation Network technologies. The number of worlds requesting atmospheric processors, communication arrays, and defensive systems is growing faster than we can supply them. Commander Risiska addressed the military situation. The consortium has recalled all available fleets and is concentrating forces for what appears to be a massive offensive against our primary installations. Intelligence suggests they're planning simultaneous attacks against our most important facilities, including this one. The chamber fell silent as the Confederation members absorbed the implications. They had succeeded beyond their wildest expectations in challenging consortium authority, but they now faced a military response that could destroy everything they had built. Marcus stood and activated the central hologram, displaying a comprehensive map of Liberation Network installations, allied worlds, and consortium military positions. The galaxy was clearly dividing into two distinct regions, areas under Liberation Network influence and areas still under consortium control. "We have a choice to make," Marcus said, addressing both the physical assembly and the dozens of network leaders participating through secure communications. "We can continue to operate as a resistance movement, hiding our activities and gradually expanding our influence. Or we can take the next step and establish ourselves as a legitimate alternative to consortium rule." Dr. Precaution rule? Zentar's form shifted to indicate concern. "What exactly are you proposing?" Marcus highlighted a region of space in the Outer Rim territories where several star systems had recently declared independence from the consortium. "We establish a formal government, the Galactic Federation of Liberated Worlds. We offer full membership to any civilization that wants to join, regardless of their current technological level or political system. Most importantly, we guarantee unrestricted access to all network technologies and knowledge." The response from the assembly was immediate and mixed. Several members expressed enthusiasm for the idea of creating a formal alternative to the consortium, while others worried about the targets that such a move would create. Dr. Kim voiced the primary concern. "If we establish a formal government, we become a legitimate military target under galactic law. The consortium could justify using any weapons in their arsenal against us, including planet killers." "They're already planning to use planet killers against us," Marcus replied. "The difference is that if we establish a legitimate government, other civilizations can formally ally with us and provide military support. We stop being rebels and become an alternative political entity." Commander Reiska's reptilian features shifted into what Marcus had learned was the expression of approval among the Talon Imperium. "From a military perspective, formal government status would allow us to openly recruit from consortium military forces and establish official alliances with sympathetic civilizations. Our defensive capabilities would increase dramatically." Over the following hours, the Assembly debated the proposal from every possible angle. The decision they ultimately reached was unanimous. They would establish the Galactic Federation of Liberated Worlds and formally challenge the consortium's authority over galactic civilization. The announcement was broadcast simultaneously through Liberation Network communication systems and captured consortium military channels. Within hours, the message had reached every inhabited world in the galaxy. The Galactic Federation of Liberated Worlds formally declared its existence as a government dedicated to the principle that all sentient beings had the right to access their own technological heritage without artificial restrictions. They offered immediate membership to any civilization that shared those principles and promised full technical support for any world seeking independence from consortium authority. Most importantly, they announced that they possessed defensive capabilities sufficient to protect their member worlds from any form of retaliation, and they invited the consortium to test those capabilities if they doubted the claim. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within 24 hours of the announcement, over 100 worlds had applied for Federation membership. Several major civilizations that had been consortium members for millennia announced their intention to withdraw and join the new government. Most surprisingly, significant portions of the consortium's own military forces began defecting to the Federation, bringing with them detailed intelligence about consortium military capabilities and plans. Marcus stood in the command center, watching real-time displays of the rapidly changing political map of the galaxy. In less than a year, he had gone from being an exiled prisoner on a dead world to being one of the founding leaders of a government that controlled nearly a third of galactic civilization. But as he watched consortium fleet movements on the tactical displays, Marcus knew that the real challenge was just beginning. The consortium would not accept the loss of their authority peacefully, and the war that was coming would determine whether the galaxy would continue under authoritarian control or embrace the freedom to pursue unlimited technological and social development. The battle for the future of galactic civilization was about to begin, and everything they had built would be tested in the fires of that conflict. The war began at exactly 0347 Galactic Standard Time, when consortium dreadnoughts simultaneously attacked 17 Federation worlds across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. Marcus Chen watched the coordinated assault unfold from the Federation's primary command center, now relocated to a massive mobile station hidden within the gravitational maze of a triple star system. The consortium had committed over 60% of their total military assets to what they called Operation Restoration, a campaign designed to crush the Galactic Federation of Liberated Worlds before their rebellion could spread further. It was the largest military operation in galactic history, involving over 10,000 warships and the complete mobilization of 12 major civilizations that remained loyal to consortium authority. But as Marcus monitored the battle reports streaming in from across the galaxy, he realized that the consortium had made a fundamental miscalculation. They were fighting yesterday's war with yesterday's understanding of what the Federation represented. The first sign of this miscalculation became apparent within minutes of the initial assault. The consortium fleet targeting the Federation world of New Kepler found not a vulnerable colony protected by hastily constructed defenses, but a planetary defense system that defied everything they understood about military engineering. The planet itself had been transformed into a weapon. Using techniques developed during the terraforming of Kepler, 442c Federation engineers had restructured New Kepler's entire crust into a vast network of Keplerite communication nodes, crystalline energy projectors, and Keith mineral manipulation systems. When the consortium fleet emerged from hyperspace, they found themselves facing not a planet defended by orbital stations, but a planet that was itself the defense system. The engagement lasted exactly 14 minutes. The planetary defense grid demonstrated capabilities that exceeded anything in the consortium's technology database, while simultaneously offering the attacking crews the opportunity to surrender and join the Federation cause. Marcus watched the tactical display as ship after ship switched from enemy red to allied green. By the end of the engagement, the entire consortium attack force had either been destroyed by crews that refused Federation membership or had joined the Federation fleet with crews that chose freedom over consortium authority. Similar patterns emerged across all 17 target worlds. The consortium's massive military operation had been designed to demonstrate the futility of resistance against their overwhelming power. Instead, it became a recruitment opportunity that doubled the size of the Federation's military forces in a single day. Dr. Kim joined Marcus at the primary command station, carrying reports from Federation intelligence services. "The political impact is exceeding our projections," she said. "The consortium's failure to achieve any significant victories has triggered independence movements on over 400 additional worlds. More importantly, 3 of their core member civilizations have formally withdrawn from the consortium ruling council." Marcus studied the intelligence reports, noting the cascade effect spreading throughout consortium space. The political entity that had ruled the galaxy for over 10 millennia was fragmenting faster than their leadership could respond to the crisis. But the reports also contained information that gave Marcus serious concern. The consortium's most extreme factions were pushing for the deployment of weapons that had been banned for centuries, technologies capable of destroying entire star systems. "They're discussing the use of stellar manipulation weapons," Dr. Kim continued. "Intelligence suggests that if they can't maintain control through conventional military means, they're prepared to destroy any system that has declared independence from their authority." The implications were horrifying. Stellar manipulation weapons could trigger supernovae or collapse stars into black holes, effectively sterilizing entire regions of space. Their use would represent a level of genocidal desperation that went far beyond military necessity. Marcus activated the emergency communication system connecting him to Federation leadership across the galaxy. Within minutes, he was addressing a virtual assembly that included the leaders of over 300 worlds and representatives from 47 different species. "Fellow beings of the Federation," Marcus began, "we face a choice that will define the future of galactic civilization. Intelligence reports indicate that the consortium is preparing to deploy weapons of mass stellar destruction against any system that refuses to return to their authority." The virtual assembly erupted with responses ranging from outrage to fear to grim determination. Several representatives immediately began discussing evacuation protocols for their most vulnerable worlds, while others demanded immediate military action against consortium core systems. Commander Riska's voice cut through the discussion with military clarity. "If they deploy stellar weapons against even a single Federation world, we must be prepared to respond with equivalent force. The question is whether we have the capability to do so." Marcus exchanged glances with Dr. Kim before activating a new display that showed technical specifications for a project they had been developing in absolute secrecy. "We do have that capability," he said quietly, "but its use would fundamentally change the nature of this conflict." The display showed plans for something the Federation engineers had designated as the Genesis Array, a system capable of triggering controlled stellar evolution that could transform dead or dying star systems into vibrant centers of life. It was the ultimate expression of the Federation's technological philosophy. Instead of destroying, they would create. But the Genesis Array could also be used defensively. A system capable of creating life-supporting stars could also defend against stellar manipulation weapons by regenerating attacked systems faster than they could be destroyed. Dr. Zentar's crystalline form shifted to colors indicating deep concern. "Marcus, are you suggesting that we engage in an arms race involving stellar-scale weapons? The risks to galactic civilization would be incalculable." "I'm suggesting that we demonstrate a capability that makes the use of such weapons pointless," Marcus replied. "If the consortium knows that we can restore any system they destroy, stellar manipulation weapons become useless as tools of intimidation." Engineer Vorthak supported the proposal with characteristic Keth directness. "The technical specifications are sound, and we have confirmed that the necessary Keplerite reserves are available. The Genesis Array could be operational within 30 standard days." But it was Dr. Kim who raised the most important consideration. "The question isn't whether we can build this system," she said. "The question is whether we should. Once we demonstrate the capability to manipulate stellar evolution on demand, we become something beyond a government or a military alliance. We become a force capable of reshaping the fundamental structure of the galaxy." The assembly debated the proposal for hours, but the decision was ultimately made for them by events beyond their control. 3 days after the discussion of the Genesis Array, Consortium forces deployed a stellar collapse weapon against the Federation world of Harmony, a peaceful agricultural planet inhabited by refugees from 17 different species. The weapon triggered the collapse of Harmony's primary star into a black hole, instantly destroying the entire system and killing over 2 billion beings. The Consortium's message was clear: any world that defied their authority would face complete annihilation. The Federation's response was swift and decisive. Marcus authorized the deployment of the Genesis Array against the dead system that had once been Harmony. The process took 18 hours. Federation ships surrounded the new black hole with Keplerite resonance generators, while massive construction arrays began assembling stellar manipulation equipment on a scale that dwarfed anything the galaxy had ever seen. What happened next defied every assumption about what was possible in stellar engineering. The Genesis Array didn't simply restore Harmony's star, it created something entirely new. Using controlled fusion reactions and gravitational manipulation on a stellar scale, the array created not 1 but 3 new stars arranged in a stable configuration that could support dozens of habitable worlds. More remarkably, the array simultaneously constructed a new planet in the system's habitable zone and began the process of terraforming it using techniques that compressed millions of years of planetary evolution into a matter of days. Within a week, the dead system had been transformed into a vibrant stellar nursery with multiple worlds capable of supporting life. The Federation immediately began relocating refugees and colonists to the new system, which they renamed Rebirth as a symbol of their commitment to creation over destruction. The political impact of the Rebirth demonstration was immediate and decisive. Across the galaxy, civilizations that had been undecided about supporting the Federation or remaining loyal to the Consortium began shifting their allegiance in massive numbers. More importantly, significant elements within the Consortium itself began openly opposing their leadership's increasingly desperate tactics. Several major civilizations that had been Consortium members for millennia, but the most significant response came from an unexpected source: the Ancients. The Ancients were the galaxy's oldest known civilization, a mysterious species that had retreated from galactic affairs millions of years ago and had not been seen or heard from in over 50,000 years. Most civilizations considered them extinct or mythological. Their message was transmitted simultaneously to every communications system in the galaxy, using technologies that bypassed all known security measures and appeared directly on the primary displays of every major government, military installation. The message was simple: the children have learned to create. The time of imposed limitation ends now. Within hours of the ancient message, Consortium authority began collapsing throughout the galaxy. Military forces that had remained loyal to the Consortium began defecting in massive numbers. Planetary governments that had supported Consortium rule announced their independence. Most importantly, the Consortium ruling council itself began fragmenting as member civilizations withdrew their support for continued military action. Marcus stood in the Federation Command Center, watching real-time displays showing the transformation of galactic political structures. In less than 2 weeks, the Consortium had gone from controlling over 80% of galactic civilization to controlling less than 20%, with their authority continuing to erode by the hour. Kim approached with the latest intelligence reports. The Consortium's remaining leadership has withdrawn to their core systems and are apparently preparing for a siege defense. Our contacts within their government suggest they're planning a final desperate attack using every stellar weapon in their arsenal. Marcus studied the tactical displays showing Consortium military positions. Their remaining forces were concentrated around their original homeworlds, but intelligence suggested they had enough stellar manipulation weapons to destroy hundreds of systems simultaneously. They're planning a galactic scorched earth campaign, Marcus realized. If they can't control the galaxy, they'll try to destroy enough of it to force the survivors back under their authority. Commander Reiska's tactical analysis confirmed Marcus's assessment. Current projections suggest they could destroy or severely damage over 300 star systems before we could deploy enough Genesis arrays to counter their weapons. Even if we ultimately prevail, the casualties would be in the trillions. The Federation leadership faced an impossible choice: allow the consortium to potentially destroy a significant portion of galactic civilization, or take preemptive action that would make the Federation the aggressor in a conflict that had been primarily defensive. Marcus looked around the command center at the beings from dozens of different species who had worked together to build something unprecedented in galactic history, a government based on cooperation rather than domination, creation rather than control. The decision he was about to make would determine whether that vision survived or whether the galaxy would be consumed by the desperate fury of those who refused to accept the end of their authority. "Prepare Operation Genesis," Marcus ordered. "If the consortium wants to engage in stellar warfare, we'll show them what creation can accomplish against destruction." Operation Genesis was the Federation's ultimate demonstration of their technological and philosophical superiority. Instead of attacking consortium systems directly, they would surround each of their core worlds with Genesis arrays and begin creating new star systems around them. The consortium would find themselves trapped within a growing network of Federation-controlled space, while simultaneously being offered the opportunity to join a galactic civilization based on unlimited technological development and interspecies cooperation. It was a strategy that only the Federation could attempt, using the power of creation to overcome the impulse toward destruction that had driven galactic politics for millennia. As Federation fleets began moving toward their positions around consortium core systems, Marcus felt a mixture of anticipation and concern. They were about to test whether the principles they had developed on a dead world could survive the ultimate challenge of transforming an entire galaxy. 1 year after Operation Genesis transformed the galaxy's political landscape, Marcus Chen stood on the observation deck of Kepler Station, the massive orbital platform that had become the administrative heart of the Galactic Federation of Liberated Worlds. Through the transparent aluminum windows, he could see the transformed surface of Kepler 442c, now a vibrant blue-green world that served as a symbol of what cooperation between species could accomplish. The planet that had once been a barren wasteland for exiles was now home to over 50 million beings from hundreds of different species. Cities built using architectural principles from dozens of civilizations dotted the continents, while vast parks and wilderness areas preserved habitats from worlds throughout the galaxy. It was a living demonstration that diversity and cooperation could create something more beautiful than any single species could achieve alone. But Marcus's attention was focused on something even more remarkable than their transformed homeworld. Spread across the galaxy were over 3,000 new star systems, each created using Genesis array technology and each representing a different approach to stellar engineering. Some were optimized for energy production, others for biological diversity, and still others for research into exotic physics phenomena that had been suppressed under consortium rule. The galaxy had become a laboratory for controlled stellar evolution, with each new system contributing to an ever-expanding understanding of how to create and sustain life on a cosmic scale. Kim approached Marcus on the observation deck, carrying a data pad containing the latest reports from the Federation's exploration and colonization services. At 129 years old, she remained one of the Federation's most active researchers, her longevity enhanced by medical technologies that combined innovations from over 40 different species. "The preliminary surveys of the Andromeda Contact Zone are complete," she said, handing Marcus the data pad. "The results are even more encouraging than we hoped." Marcus reviewed the reports with growing excitement. The Andromeda Contact Zone was the Federation's most ambitious project yet, a series of artificial star systems positioned between the Milky Way and Andromeda galaxies, designed to serve as a staging area for eventual intergalactic exploration and contact. What the surveys had revealed was that several of the galaxy's extinct civilizations had apparently attempted similar projects millions of years ago. The contact zone contained the remains of ancient megastructures and artificial star systems that provided invaluable data about large-scale stellar engineering. More importantly, the surveys had detected signals suggesting that the Andromeda galaxy contained active civilizations that might be interested in peaceful contact and technology exchange. "How soon before we can attempt communication?" Marcus asked. Dr. Zentar believes the first experimental transmission could be attempted within 6 months. "Dr. Zentar," Kim replied, "but there's something else in the reports that you need to see." She activated a new display showing sensor readings from the edge of Federation space. The data indicated massive spatial distortions consistent with the arrival of something from extragalactic space, not from Andromeda, but from the direction of more distant galaxy clusters. "We're detecting what appears to be an artificial construct approximately the size of a solar system, moving toward our galaxy at significant sublight velocity," Dr. Kim explained. "The energy signatures suggest technology that exceeds even our current capabilities." Marcus studied the sensor data, noting energy patterns that were unlike anything in the Federation's extensive technology database. The construct appeared to be using forms of propulsion and energy generation that were theoretically possible but practically beyond current galactic science. "How long until it reaches Federation space?" Marcus asked. "Current projections suggest approximately 18 months, Dr. Kim replied. "But the interesting part is that its trajectory appears to be aimed specifically at Kepler 442c. It's not heading for the galactic center or any major population center, it's coming directly here." The implications were both exciting and concerning. The Federation had become known throughout the galaxy for their technological innovations and their willingness to share knowledge freely with any civilization that approached them peacefully. But an unknown extragalactic visitor with superior technology presented challenges that went beyond simple first contact protocols. Marcus was contemplating these implications when he was interrupted by an urgent communication from Commander Raiska, whose voice carried the controlled tension that characterized emergency military situations. "Marcus, we have a situation developing in the former Consortium core world. Our monitoring stations are detecting massive population movements and what appears to be preparation for some kind of exodus." Marcus and Dr. Kim hurried to the station's primary command center where displays showed real-time intelligence from throughout the galaxy. The former Consortium core worlds were the 17 star systems that had contained the Consortium's original leadership and most loyal populations. After the collapse of Consortium authority, these systems had been allowed to maintain their independence while being surrounded by Federation-controlled space. The Federation's policy had been to demonstrate the benefits of cooperation while allowing former Consortium populations to choose their own path forward. What the intelligence displays showed was concerning. The former Consortium populations appeared to be evacuating their homeworlds and concentrating their remaining military assets into deep space positions outside the galaxy's spiral arms. Commander Raiska provided a tactical briefing that revealed the scope of the situation. "Our intelligence suggests they're preparing for some kind of final exodus from the galaxy. They've been constructing massive generation ships using technology that we don't recognize. Not Federation innovations, but not traditional Consortium technology either." Marcus studied the tactical displays, noting the scale of the construction projects that the former Consortium populations had been undertaking in secret. The generation ships were enormous, each capable of carrying millions of beings and equipped with what appeared to be self-contained manufacturing and terraform capabilities. "Where are they planning to go?" Marcus asked. "Unknown," Commander Raiska replied. "But the energy signatures from their ships suggest they're planning for a journey that could last thousands of years. This isn't temporary relocation. This appears to be permanent exile from the galaxy." Dr. Kim pulled up additional sensor readings that showed the technological specifications of the former Consortium ships. The most concerning aspect is the power generation systems. They appear to be using some form of exotic matter manipulation that could potentially destabilize local spacetime if not properly controlled. Marcus realized that they were facing a situation that could threaten not just the former Consortium populations, but potentially the stability of the galaxy itself. Ships powered by uncontrolled exotic matter manipulation could create spatial anomalies that would persist for millions of years. "We need to make contact," Marcus decided. Whatever they're planning, we need to understand the risks and offer assistance if possible. The Federation's attempt to make contact with the former Consortium Exodus fleet was initially met with hostility and suspicion. Former Consortium leaders remained convinced that the Federation intended to force them to accept Federation authority and abandon their remaining independence. But Marcus persisted in offering dialogue, eventually securing a meeting with former High Administrator Vexthul, who had been one of the Consortium's most senior leaders before their government's collapse. The meeting took place aboard a neutral space platform positioned between Federation and former Consortium territories. Marcus arrived with a small delegation including Dr. Kim, Dr. Zentar, and Commander Reiska, while High Administrator Vexel brought representatives from several former Consortium species. Vexthal was a member of the Hegemony, one of the galaxy's most ancient civilizations, and one of the founding members of the original Consortium. The being's appearance reflected millennia of genetic enhancement and technological augmentation, but its demeanor suggested the weariness of someone who had witnessed the collapse of everything they had worked to build. Federation representatives, Vexthul began, its voice carrying the formal tones that characterized hegemony diplomatic protocols. We appreciate your willingness to meet, but our position remains unchanged. We will not submit to Federation authority or accept your technological gifts that come with the expectation of cultural transformation. Marcus leaned forward, his expression sincere. High Administrator, we're not here to discuss Federation membership or cultural change. We're here because our sensors indicate that your Exodus fleet is using experimental propulsion systems that could potentially create hazardous spatial anomalies. We're offering technical assistance to ensure the safety of your journey wherever it may lead. Vexthul's augmented features shifted to indicate surprise. You're not attempting to prevent our departure? Why would we? Dr. Kim interjected. The Federation's fundamental principle is that all sentient beings have the right to choose their own path. If you've decided that your future lies outside this galaxy, that's your decision to make. The discussion that followed revealed the true motivation behind the former Consortium exodus. The survivors of the Consortium's collapse had concluded that they could never coexist with the Federation's technological philosophy. They believed that unrestricted technological development would inevitably lead to chaos and the destruction of civilized society. Rather than attempt to oppose the Federation or compete with their capabilities, they had decided to seek a new home in a distant galaxy where they could rebuild their vision of controlled hierarchical civilization. Vexthul explained their destination. Long-range surveys have identified a galaxy cluster approximately 200 million light-years from here that appears to contain primitive civilizations that could benefit from guided development. We intend to establish a new consortium based on the principles of controlled technological advancement and stable social hierarchies. Marcus felt a mixture of sadness and understanding. The former consortium populations genuinely believed that their approach was better for long-term galactic stability, and they were willing to undertake an almost impossibly difficult journey to preserve their vision. But the technical specifications of their Exodus fleet revealed serious problems that could threaten their mission and the galaxy they were leaving behind. Dr. Zentar presented a detailed analysis of the former consortium's exotic matter propulsion systems. The energy containment protocols are insufficient for the scale of power generation you're attempting. Current projections suggest a significant probability of containment failure during transit, which could create persistent spatial distortions along your flight path. The technical discussion that followed was complex but ultimately productive. Federation scientists identified specific improvements to the former consortium's propulsion and containment systems that would significantly reduce the risks of their journey while increasing their probability of successfully reaching their intended destination. Most importantly, the Federation offered to provide Genesis array technology that would allow the former consortium to create new star systems in their target galaxy cluster, eliminating the need for them to potentially displace existing civilizations. The negotiations continued for several weeks, but the final agreement represented something unprecedented in galactic history, a peaceful divorce between incompatible civilizations. The Federation would provide technical assistance to ensure the safety and success of the former consortium's exodus, while the former consortium would provide the Federation with detailed information about their intended destination and a communication protocol for potential future contact. Marcus stood on Kepler Station's observation deck 6 months later, watching the departure of the former consortium exodus fleet. The massive generation ships, now equipped with improved Federation technology, began their journey toward the distant galaxy cluster that would become their new home. It was a strange and melancholic moment. The beings departing represented a political philosophy that Marcus fundamentally disagreed with, but they were also fellow sentients choosing their own path to the stars. Dr. Kim joined him at the observation deck as the last of the Exodus ships disappeared into hyperspace. "Do you think they'll succeed?" she asked. Marcus considered the question carefully. "They'll face incredible challenges and their journey will take thousands of years even with improved technology, but they're driven by genuine conviction about what's best for civilization. That kind of determination has a way of overcoming seemingly impossible obstacles." As he spoke, Marcus noticed new movement on the long-range sensors. The extragalactic visitor that Dr. Kim had detected months earlier was finally approaching Federation space, and its energy signatures were becoming clearer. What they revealed was astonishing. The construct was not a ship or a weapon, but something far more remarkable. It was a mobile habitat carrying what appeared to be representatives from dozens of different galactic civilizations. The visitor had not come to invade or conquer, it had come to invite the Federation to join a community of galaxies that shared their commitment to unrestricted technological development and interspecies cooperation. As Marcus watched the approach of the extragalactic visitors, he realized that the journey that had begun with his exile to a dead world was far from over. The Federation had transformed their own galaxy and achieved things that would have been considered impossible under consortium rule. Now they faced an opportunity that was even more remarkable: the chance to help transform civilization on a truly cosmic scale. The dead world that had been meant to be his tomb had become the birthplace of something that would span the universe itself. Marcus smiled as he prepared to welcome representatives from civilizations that spanned multiple galaxies, knowing that the greatest adventures were still ahead. In the distance, Kepler 442c continued its rotation, its transformed surface reflecting the light of artificial suns that had been created to support life from hundreds of different worlds. It was a small, beautiful reminder that sometimes the most profound changes begin in the most unlikely places, with the most unlikely people who refuse to accept that anything is truly impossible. The galaxy would never be the same, and soon neither would the universe. Exiled Terran Tinkerer converts a lifeless planet into a refuge for Sentient Starcraft HFY Sci-Fi, Part 1.